The first sign was so small that most of the galaxy did not even notice it. A few listening posts, far out in the blackness of space, reported something strange. For centuries, they had picked up Earth's signals. Radio broadcasts, digital transmissions, scattered bits of noise drifting into the stars. It was a constant background hum, like the heartbeat of a restless world. Then one day that heartbeat stopped. At first, the technicians thought it was equipment failure. Receivers were checked, power grids reset, and long-range arrays realigned. But no matter how many times they tried, the result was the same. Silence. Earth was gone from the spectrum. The flow of signals, so steady and endless for generations, had disappeared. Within days, the silence spread from rumor to official notice. Other outposts confirmed it. The transmissions that once made Earth the loudest world in the galaxy had gone quiet in a single moment. Not a fading, not a slow decline. 1 second there was noise, millions of voices shouting into the void, and the next nothing at all. It was as if the planet had simply vanished. Alien scholars debated the meaning. Some claimed that humanity had finally destroyed itself. Others argued that Earth had been attacked, crushed by a greater force. But the oldest and wisest among them knew better. They had studied humans long enough to understand that silence from Earth was not a sign of weakness. It was a warning. Still, curiosity was stronger than fear for many. Explorers and traders who operated near the Sol system sent probes inward, small machines designed to sneak past defenses. None returned. Even automated drones, which had no weapons and carried no threat, vanished without a trace. Data streams were cut instantly, as if space itself had swallowed them whole. The galaxy grew uneasy. The great empires, who had always seen Earth as a distant but unpredictable power, now found themselves haunted by questions. How could an entire planet go silent overnight? Why did nothing escape from within the Sol system? And most importantly, was this silence hiding something waiting to strike? For the smaller civilizations, the silence was terrifying. They had lived in the shadow of larger empires and remembered the times when humanity had fought wars against impossible odds, and won. They whispered among themselves that perhaps Earth had not fallen but had chosen to vanish, drawing inwards for a reason only humans could understand. Across the galaxy, observers replayed their recordings of Earth's last signals, trying to find patterns. The final transmissions were ordinary news, entertainment, military chatter, civilian broadcasts. Nothing hinted at collapse. The last human words heard by the stars were not of war or fear, but of daily life, laughter, music, and arguments. And then, without warning, the sky closed its mouth. The silence felt heavy, unnatural. Space was never truly quiet. Planets radiated energy. Stars whispered on every wavelength. Civilizations left trails of communication. But now the region around Earth felt like a hole in the galaxy, a dead zone where even light seemed slower to pass. The Watchers felt it in their bones, though they had no bones like humans did. It was not just silence, it was a waiting silence. Commanders from the stronger empires met in hidden councils. They discussed whether to investigate further, or to leave Earth alone. Some argued that if humanity had truly been destroyed, this was the best opportunity to expand into their space. Others warned that such a move could awaken something best left sleeping. In the end, pride won over caution. Probes became larger, then turned into ships. Fleets were dispatched, carefully, like hunters approaching a wounded beast. Yet nothing returned. The fleets vanished as surely as the first probes had. Distress calls were cut off mid-sentence. Sensors showed only static. The great empires tried to hide their losses, but rumors could not be contained. The galaxy now believed what the smaller races had already begun to fear. The silence was not emptiness. The silence was alive. Meanwhile, in the minds of alien citizens, the image of humanity grew darker. They remembered the stories of Earth's soldiers who never surrendered, of ships that fought until their last spark, of colonies that rebuilt themselves after being burned to ash. If such people chose to go silent, what could it mean? No one wanted to admit the truth aloud, but everyone thought it. Humanity had gone quiet because they were preparing for something. In marketplaces, in academies, in military halls, the question spread like fire. What was Earth building in that silence? What power was being forged behind that curtain of emptiness? Children of alien worlds asked their parents why the humans had stopped speaking. The parents had no answer, only fear in their eyes. Time passed, but the silence never broke. No explanation came. No refugee ships escaped. Not even debris drifted outward from the Sol system. Earth remained invisible, shielded in its quiet shell, and the galaxy realized it was no longer looking at a missing world. It was staring into the calm before a storm. And so the day Earth fell silent was remembered by all. It was the day the galaxy stopped feeling safe. Because deep down, every species understood the same truth. When a predator stops making noise, it is not because it is weak. It is because it is ready to strike. When Earth went silent, confusion spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Entire networks of communication were filled with speculation, fear, and disbelief. It was not only scientists and military leaders who were troubled. Even ordinary citizens on distant worlds could feel something was wrong. For generations, Earth had been a constant presence, a world that never stopped talking, sending out signals of life, war, and ambition. Now that voice was gone, and the silence unsettled everyone. At first, many thought it was only a technical issue. Perhaps Earth's satellites had failed, or maybe a solar storm had burned their communication grid. The idea that humans had made some kind of mistake was comforting, because it made them seem less threatening. But as more reports came in, the truth became harder to deny. It wasn't just one system that had stopped transmitting. The entire Sol system had become unreachable. No signals came out, no ships responded, and even automated relays placed by alien empires at the edge of the system stopped sending data. The first council meetings were filled with arguments. Some officials believed humanity had destroyed itself in war. They spoke with relief, saying that perhaps humans had finally been their own undoing. But others shook their heads. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also survivors. History had shown time and again that no matter how many times they were pushed to the edge of extinction, they always found a way to return stronger. The sudden silence did not look like destruction. It looked like intention. Several empires decided to test the silence themselves. They sent their smallest ships to scan the Sol system to see if humans were truly gone. The results only added to the confusion. Every ship sent in was lost without explanation. Some disappeared just as they crossed the boundary of the system, their signals cut off mid-transmission. Others managed to send a few fragments back. Blurred images of shadows in space, flashes of unnatural light, then nothing. Those fragments were studied endlessly, magnified and analyzed, but no one could say for certain what they showed. Rumors spread faster than facts. On trading worlds and spaceports, whispers grew into full-blown stories. Some said Earth had developed a weapon so powerful that it erased anything that came too close. Others believed that humans had found a way to cloak their entire system, hiding themselves in a veil of darkness. A few even whispered about things far worse, that humans had struck a deal with something beyond the galaxy, a force older and darker than any empire could imagine. While the ordinary people told stories, leaders of the great civilizations struggled with decisions. Should they send larger fleets to investigate? Should they stay away and pretend nothing had happened? Both choices carried danger. If humanity was truly gone, then Earth's territory was open for conquest. But if humanity was not gone, then approaching their silence might awaken something terrible. No leader wanted to appear weak, but no one wanted to risk provoking a species that had already proven itself capable of rewriting history through sheer willpower. The smaller civilizations felt the tension more deeply than anyone. They had lived under the shadow of both the great empires and humanity's reputation. For them, the silence was unbearable. Many remembered the old stories, passed down for generations, about humans who fought until their last breath, who turned disasters into victories, who refused to bow to stronger forces. The silence did not comfort them. It terrified them. They believed that humanity had not vanished but had chosen to step back, waiting for the right moment to return. On distant mining colonies, Workers gathered around screens to watch news feeds of the silence. Markets crashed, trade routes were disrupted, and entire sectors of space shifted their defenses closer to their homeworlds. The galaxy was reacting not to war, but to the absence of noise. The fear of the unknown was stronger than any battle they had ever fought. Scientists tried to calm the panic. They pointed out that silence did not always mean danger. Perhaps Earth's people had turned inward, focusing on their planet rather than the stars. Maybe they had grown tired of galactic politics. But even as they spoke, they felt a weight in their hearts. Because silence of this kind, absolute, immediate, and impenetrable, was not natural. Nature did not create clean cuts in communication like this. Someone had made a choice. The leaders of one great empire decided to push further. They ordered a fleet of warships to approach Sol, believing that a strong show of power would uncover the truth. The fleet departed with confidence, its commanders certain that humans were no longer a threat. The galaxy watched closely, waiting for their reports. None came. Days turned to weeks, and the fleet never returned. Not a single ship. Not a single signal. Nothing. It was as if they had been erased from existence. That was when the confusion turned into dread. If humanity was destroyed, who had destroyed the fleet? If humanity was alive, what were they hiding? The silence no longer seemed like weakness. It felt like the prelude to something greater, something the galaxy could not yet understand. In schools, alien children asked their teachers where the humans had gone. The teachers had no answers. In military bases, soldiers trained harder, preparing for a war they could not define. And in the minds of rulers, one thought repeated itself again and again. Earth was not silent because it was gone. Earth was silent because something was coming. The galaxy had lived for centuries with the noise of Earth. They had grown used to humanity's chaos, their unpredictable nature, their endless voices shouting into space. Now that the voices were gone, the silence itself was louder than any war drum, and everyone, from the mightiest emperor to the poorest farmer, felt the same chill. The silence was not an end. It was a beginning. The silence around Earth had already unsettled the galaxy, but what came next was far worse. When the first fleets were sent into Sol, no one expected them to vanish so completely. Probe could fail. A small ship could disappear. But fleets, entire groups of warships with advanced technology and centuries of experience, those were not supposed to simply vanish. Yet they did. The first fleet to disappear belonged to a mid-level empire, proud and ambitious. They believed the silence was weakness, and they wanted to be the first to claim Earth. Their armada entered the edge of the Sol system, broadcasting confidence to the galaxy. Their last transmission was a short message. Crossing Neptune's orbit. No resistance detected. After that, there was nothing. Not static, not distress signals, not debris. It was as if the entire fleet had been swallowed by the void. At first, other empires laughed at their misfortune. They called it incompetence, a failure of discipline. But then another empire, stronger and more careful, tried again. Their fleet was larger, with better technology, and their commanders were not arrogant. They advanced slowly, scanning carefully, ready for ambushes. For a few hours, their transmissions flowed back to their homeworlds. Reports of empty space, quiet planets, and no human ships. Then, as they passed deeper into the system, their signals began to break. Static filled the channels, voices cut in half, images blurred. One last transmission reached them. A scream, metal tearing, alarms blaring. Then silence. The entire fleet was gone. Now the galaxy could no longer laugh. 2 fleets had vanished without leaving a trace. Panic began to spread. How could such powerful forces simply disappear? Where were the wrecks? Where were the survivors? Not even an escape pod was found drifting in space. It was unnatural, impossible. Armies lost battles, yes. Fleets were destroyed, yes. But destruction always left evidence. Burning ships, corpses, floating wreckage. This was different. This was erasure. Smaller civilizations whispered in fear. They believed humans had built something terrible, something that devoured anything entering their system. Some called it the black net, An invisible trap stretched across the stars. Others believed in the Shadow Fleet, hidden warships that could erase enemies before they even saw them. No one knew the truth, but everyone agreed on one thing. Earth's silence was not weakness. It was a warning. Despite the growing fear, pride and greed pushed other empires to test their strength. No one wanted to admit they were afraid. No one wanted to show weakness in front of rivals. So more fleets were sent. They entered Sol from different directions, trying to outsmart whatever threat lurked there. None of them returned. One by one, they vanished into the silence, leaving behind only fear and confusion. By now, entire sectors of the galaxy were in chaos. Trade routes collapsed as ships avoided traveling near Sol. Border colonies were abandoned, their people fleeing back toward the safety of their homeworlds. The Great Councils held emergency meetings, but no one could agree on what to do. Some leaders argued that they should unite and launch a massive attack to overwhelm whatever defenses humanity had built. Others warned that such an action would only provoke disaster. The debates turned bitter, but no decision was reached. Meanwhile, the mystery of the vanishing fleets grew heavier. Scientists and strategists worked day and night, trying to understand what could cause such disappearances. Some believed humans had discovered a way to fold space itself, pulling ships into a hidden dimension. Others suggested they had developed weapons that left no trace, weapons so advanced that the galaxy had never seen their kind before. A few even dared to whisper that perhaps it wasn't the humans at all. Perhaps something else had awakened on Earth, something not human, and humanity itself was already gone. But deep down, most knew the truth. This had humanity's mark all over it. Humans were survivors. They were fighters. They had always been underestimated, always been doubted, and always returned stronger. The silence, the vanishing fleets, it all fit their nature. They were not hiding because they were weak. They were hiding because they were preparing. Fear spread among ordinary people. On distant colonies, parents told their children to stay indoors after dark, as if humanity's silence could somehow reach them across light years. Soldiers began whispering in the barracks, saying they would rather fight any empire in the galaxy than face the unknown threat of Earth. Traders stopped carrying human goods, fearing it would mark them as targets. The galaxy was not at war, but the tension felt worse than war. Felt like waiting for something inevitable. Still, pride blinded the most powerful empire of them all. They could not accept that fleets kept disappearing. They decided to send a truly massive force, hundreds of warships, the strongest fleet ever assembled for a single mission. Their leaders believed numbers would protect them, that no hidden weapon could wipe out such a force. The galaxy held its breath as the armada entered Sol. For hours, they sent back steady signals. Their commanders laughed at the fear of others. Then, without warning, the signals broke. Static. Screams. Silence. The largest fleet in history was gone. That was the moment when the galaxy realized the truth. It wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't coincidence. Something inside the Sol system was defending Earth with absolute power, and it left no survivors. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was waiting. From that day on, no one dared to approach Earth. The Sol system became a black hole of fear, a place ships would rather travel light years around than pass through. The galaxy finally understood what the silence meant. Earth was preparing for something, and when their silence ended, it would shake the stars as the fleets continued to vanish into silence. The galaxy grew restless. The fear was strong, but another feeling began to rise too: memory. In quiet rooms, among the oldest races, whispers spread of times long past. Humanity had not always been seen as weak. Long before the silence, before the great empires reached their peak, humans had already carved their reputation into history. And now, in the face of the unknown, those memories returned like ghosts. The younger species, born into a galaxy where empires ruled unchallenged, did not understand the fear at first. To them, humans were simply a loud, reckless species from a small blue world. They had heard stories of humans starting wars, humans fighting against impossible odds, humans refusing to bow to greater powers, But to them, those were just tales exaggerated by time. Surely one planet could not hold such danger. Surely silence meant they were gone. But the older species remembered differently. The Cytheri, whose lifespans stretched across millennia, recalled the human wars that had spread across whole sectors. They remembered how humans had faced fleets 5 times their size and still managed to win by fighting with a madness no other species could match. The Vanar, whose empires rose and fell like seasons, spoke of human colonies destroyed in fire, only for survivors to rise from the ashes and rebuild stronger than before. To them, the silence was not confusing. It was terrifying because it was familiar. Humanity had always been at their most dangerous when they appeared weak. In the deep archives of forgotten worlds, records of human defiance were studied again. There were stories of the siege of Helios, when an entire human fleet held off invaders for weeks, though every ship was burning and every captain knew they would die. They never surrendered. Not one ship lowered its flag. In the end, they were destroyed, but the memory of their stand forced their enemies to retreat, shaken and unwilling to face more. The galaxy remembered that humans fought not just with weapons, but with spirit, and that spirit could not be broken. The elders of the galaxy tried to warn their leaders. They stood in council halls and said the silence was not emptiness. It was the same silence that came before a storm, the same silence humans had used before when preparing for their greatest battles. They reminded the young ones that humans were not like other species. Where others adapted slowly, humans adapted fast. Where others gave up, humans endured. Where others avoided pain, humans embraced it and learned to survive. But the young rulers did not want to listen. They had grown arrogant in their power, believing their fleets and their technology made them untouchable. To them, the stories were nothing but legends, tales exaggerated by frightened voices. They did not believe one small species could carry such weight. And yet, deep in their hearts, even they felt uneasy when they looked toward Sol. The smaller civilizations, the ones who had suffered at the hands of both empires and humans, felt the weight of those memories the most. For them, the silence was not a puzzle. It was a nightmare returning. They remembered the human refugees who once fled to their worlds, broken but unyielding. They remembered how those same refugees built new lives, and when danger came again, they rose to fight with unmatched ferocity. To these smaller races, the silence felt like humanity's old fire rekindled. And they knew if that fire was burning again, then the galaxy was in danger. Every passing day made the memories stronger. In marketplaces, alien traders told stories of human cunning, how a single human ship once tricked an entire fleet by faking its destruction, only to return and strike when the enemy thought it safe. In academies, professors taught about human psychology, explaining their strange ability to unite when threatened, to fight hardest when all seemed lost. Even in songs and poems, the idea spread that silence from Earth meant something terrible was being forged in secret. The galaxy began to feel the weight of history pressing down on it. The vanishing fleets were not simply losses, they were warnings. They fit perfectly into the pattern of humanity's past. The humans never showed their hand too early. They waited, they endured, and then, when their enemies thought them defeated, they struck with fury. Among the oldest beings in the galaxy, a phrase was repeated quietly, almost like a prayer. Do not mistake silence for peace. They remembered too well how humanity had used silence before. They would appear beaten, broken, but in truth, they were sharpening their blades in the shadows. And so the galaxy found itself trapped between fear of the present and fear of the past. The silence was terrifying on its own, but it was the memory of what humans were capable of that made it unbearable. Leaders tried to comfort their people, claiming that humans were gone, that the silence was proof of their end. But no one truly believed them. The memories were too strong. The more the fleets vanished, the more the galaxy understood. Humanity had not been erased. They had chosen this path. The silence was not weakness, it was preparation. It was the gathering of strength, the quiet before the storm. And when the storm finally broke, everyone knew it would not be a small one. It would be the kind of storm that rewrote history. In the end, the silence itself became a story, passed from one world to another. Children asked their parents why the humans were quiet. The parents, remembering old tales, could only answer with fear. Scholars studied the past and warned that the future would be worse. Soldiers trained harder, knowing they might one day be called to face the storm that silence promised. The galaxy could not escape the truth. Humanity had vanished from sight, but not from memory. And memory was often more dangerous than the present. Because memory carried fear, and fear carried power. The silence was terrifying not just because no one knew what humans were doing, but because everyone remembered what humans had done before. The day Earth went silent was already history, but it was history written in two parts: the silence of now, and the memory of what had come before. And together they formed a warning that every species understood, even if they did not want to say it aloud. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was waiting. The galaxy had already grown uneasy with Earth's silence and the vanishing fleets. But then, something new began to happen. It started small, almost invisible, but those who studied the stars felt it first. Instruments picked up strange readings near the Sol system. Gravitational waves rippled outward, subtle at first, then stronger. Space itself seemed to tremble. At first, scientists thought it was natural. Perhaps a large comet had struck a planet. Perhaps a star in the system was dying. But when the data kept repeating, spreading farther each day, it became clear this was not nature. It was deliberate. Something was happening inside Sol, and it was powerful enough to bend the galaxy around it. Ships passing light years away reported strange disturbances. Their navigation systems glitched. Wormholes near Sol began to flicker, opening and closing like unstable doors. Entire routes collapsed, stranding travelers in deep space. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the Sol system seemed to pulse like a heart, each tremor stronger than the last. On distant worlds, panic grew. The smaller civilizations whispered that Earth had awakened something ancient. Some believed humans had found a way to use their planet itself as a weapon, turning gravity and energy into tools of war. Others said the silence was over. They were hearing the first echoes of what humanity had been building. The great empires tried to remain calm, but even their leaders were unsettled. They remembered how fleets had already vanished into nothing. Now, with space itself shaking, they realized the humans were not just hiding. They were preparing something vast, something that touched not only their own system but the galaxy beyond. In laboratories, alien scientists worked without rest. They studied the tremors, mapping their waves as they spread outward. Some noticed a disturbing pattern. The tremors were not random. They came in cycles, steady and growing stronger. It was as though a machine had been switched on, one too large to comprehend. A star forge, some suggested. Planet-sized engine. Or worse, a fleet awakening all at once. The first real sign of danger came when a merchant convoy, traveling along a safe corridor, was caught in one of the ripples. Their ships reported sudden gravity surges that tore vessels apart. Out of 30 ships, only 4 limped home, their crews speaking in terrified voices of unseen hands crushing them. The survivors described the feeling of being watched, as if the tremors were not accidents but warnings. The galaxy reacted with fear and anger. Some demanded an immediate attack on Sol, to destroy whatever was causing the disturbances. Others argued that attacking would only provoke something even worse. But no one could deny the truth anymore. Earth's silence was breaking. Not with words, but with tremors that shook the very fabric of space. The smaller species began to evacuate colonies near Sol. They abandoned decades of work, entire cities left behind, because no one wanted to be close when humanity finally revealed itself. The fear spread so fast that even neutral systems, who had no history with humans, pulled back their borders. To them, the silence had turned into something far worse. A storm building in plain sight. Meanwhile, strange stories spread among travelers who passed near Sol. Some claimed they saw massive shadows moving between planets, larger than any ship ever built. Others swore they heard faint signals, ghostly echoes of human voices carried on the tremors, like whispers riding the waves. Most dismissed these as fear-driven lies, but deep inside, no one truly doubted them. For the older races, the tremors were the final confirmation of what they already feared. Humanity was not gone. They were building, uniting, and waiting. The silence was their shield, and the tremors were their announcement. The elders warned their people not to mistake the ripples for chaos. They were the rhythm of preparation, the sign of a force waking from its long sleep. The galaxy grew more divided than ever. Some empires began to secretly prepare for war, reinforcing fleets and building new weapons. Others focused on defense, pulling back and hoping to survive whatever came. And yet, no one dared to send more ships into Sol. Too many had already vanished. And now, with the tremors growing, the risk was unthinkable. The ordinary people felt the changes most deeply. On distant planets, farmers saw their skies ripple strangely as the tremors passed. On mining worlds, workers reported tools shaking violently in their hands, though no earthquake had touched the ground. Children woke screaming in the night, saying they could feel the galaxy itself breathing. Across every world, one truth became impossible to deny. Humanity's silence was not the end of them. It was the beginning of something greater. The tremors were not accidents. They were steps. Each ripple in space was like a footstep of something rising, something too vast to hide much longer. Rumors spread of what might come next. Some believed Earth was building warships the size of moons, hidden until now. Others thought the humans had built a machine to control gravity itself, able to crush fleets before they ever fired a shot. A few believed they were preparing to move their entire planet, turning Earth into a weapon that could not be stopped. But whatever the truth was, the galaxy agreed on one thing. The tremors were only the beginning. The silence that had terrified them was breaking apart, and what came after would not be peace. It would be revelation. The day the first tremor was recorded, historians later wrote, was the moment the galaxy truly began to fear. The vanishing fleets had been frightening, yes. The silence had been unsettling. But the tremors were something else entirely. They were proof that humanity was not only alive but stronger than anyone had imagined. They were not hiding anymore. They were rising. And as each tremor grew louder, spreading across the stars, the galaxy finally understood. The storm humanity had been preparing for was coming closer. And when it arrived, there would be no escape. For weeks, the galaxy had lived with the tremors coming from Sol. Every day they grew stronger, reaching farther into space. Planets light-years away felt the pull, and fleets refused to travel near the system. Everyone waited, holding their breath, unsure of what would come next. And then, without warning, the silence finally broke. The first signal was faint. It was not the chatter of millions of voices as in the past. Not music, not news, not random noise. It was a single transmission, sharp and clear, sent across frequencies the galaxy had not heard from Earth in decades. The voice was human, calm, steady, terrifying. The words were simple. We are still here. That single message spread like wildfire. Civilizations across the stars froze as the transmission was replayed again and again. The humans had not been destroyed. They had not abandoned their world. They had been preparing. The silence had been their choice. And now they had chosen to speak again. The message did not stop there. Soon, a longer broadcast followed, translated into dozens of alien languages. Humanity revealed what the galaxy had only guessed at. They had turned inward, uniting their species under one purpose. For too long, humans said, they had been divided, scattered by petty wars, distracted by their differences. But in their silence, they had come together. The divisions were gone. Earth was one. And while they were silent, they had not been idle. The humans spoke of their preparations, though they revealed little detail. They said they had built new fleets, stronger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They said they had developed weapons not designed to conquer, but to ensure survival at any cost. They promised that if the galaxy threatened them again, they would not simply defend themselves, they would end the threat completely. The words were not shouted. They were not delivered with arrogance or rage. The humans spoke with calm certainty, and that was what frightened the galaxy most. There was no desperation in their tone, no weakness. It was the voice of a people who had faced extinction before and had decided they would never face it again. The smaller civilizations panicked first. Many of them had lived in fear of the great empires for centuries, and now they realized Earth might be stronger than all of them combined. Refugees fled even farther from Sol, entire colonies abandoned in terror. Traders swore never to pass near human space again. To them, the revelation was simple. Humanity had gone from prey to predator, and no one wanted to be nearby when the hunt began. The great empires reacted with fury and fear. Their fleets had vanished inside Sol. Their power had been challenged, and now humanity spoke as if they were equals, or worse, as if they were already beyond them. Some leaders called for immediate war, demanding that the galaxy unite to crush humanity before they revealed the full extent of their strength. Others hesitated, remembering how every fleet sent into Sol had already disappeared. If that was what humans could do in silence, what would happen now that they had chosen to speak? Across the stars, ordinary people whispered about the revelation. Some were horrified, some were awed, a few even admired it. Humanity had done what no other species had ever managed. They had taken their greatest weakness, their division, their endless arguments, and turned it into strength. They had united in a way no empire had ever truly achieved. And that unity gave them power no one could measure. Then came the final part of the message, the part that froze the galaxy in silence once more. Humanity did not threaten invasion. They did not promise conquest. Instead, they gave a warning. They said they did not seek war, but if war was forced upon them, they would fight until none remained. They would not allow extinction to come to their world. Not from fleets, not from empires, not from anyone. And to prove their words, they released a single image. The image was not of Earth. It was of space itself, filled with shadows that moved like predators. Warships, larger and darker than anything the galaxy had ever seen, floated in perfect silence, their engines glowing faintly like dying suns. There were hundreds, maybe thousands. Their design was unlike any human ship ever recorded. They looked as if they had been built not for exploration or defense, but for one purpose only: war without mercy. That image shook the galaxy more than any weapon could have. Entire species began to believe extinction was near, not for humans but for everyone else. The silence had not been emptiness. It had been the sound of construction, of preparation, of an entire species turning itself into a weapon. The older civilizations nodded grimly, remembering their warnings. This was what they had feared all along. Humanity did not rise slowly, step by step, like other species. They leapt forward when no one expected it. They transformed in silence, and when they emerged, they were always stronger than before. For the galaxy, the revelation was clear. Humanity had survived. Humanity had grown. And humanity had armed itself with power the stars had never seen. What came next, no one could predict. Would humans strike first? Would the empires unite to destroy them? Or would fear itself tear the galaxy apart before a single shot was fired? But one truth was certain. The silence was over. The galaxy had heard humanity's voice again, and it was not the voice of prey. It was the voice of survivors who had become predators. And now, everyone knew that the real war had not yet begun. The revelation was not the end. It was the beginning. The Watchers had always believed they were untouchable. For centuries, they had been the galaxy's silent rulers, hidden in the shadows, pulling strings, guiding events, and making sure no species ever grew too powerful. They rarely showed themselves, but their influence was everywhere. Entire empires bowed to their secret whispers. Fleets changed direction with their silent commands. To most of the galaxy, they were only a rumor, a story told in fear. But in truth, they were real, and they had been watching humanity since the very beginning. When Earth first went silent, the Watchers were pleased. They thought humans had finally broken under the pressure of the galaxy. But when the silence dragged on for years, unease grew. Their fleets vanished near Sol, their probes never returned, and their spies never reported back. The Watchers tried to control the fear spreading across the stars, but it was no use. Something was happening on Earth and they could not see it. For beings who believed they saw everything, that was the beginning of their downfall. Then came the revelation, the human message that shook the galaxy. When the Watchers heard it, they felt the first taste of true fear. The words were calm, but the meaning was clear. Humanity had grown beyond control. For the first time in their long existence, the Watchers realized there was a species they could not manipulate. They had underestimated the humans. They had given them space to grow. And now it was too late. The Watchers called an emergency gathering. In their hidden strongholds, far from any star, they debated. Some demanded war. "We must strike now," they said. "If we wait, humanity will only grow stronger." Others hesitated, remembering the fleets that had already vanished. They spoke of caution, of patience, of waiting for humanity to reveal its weaknesses. But even as they argued, their networks began to crumble. For years, the Watchers had hidden behind secrecy, using shadows as their shield. But now the shadows betrayed them. One by one, their hidden stations went dark. Fleets that once guarded their secrets vanished into silence. Entire systems under their control suddenly refused their orders. The Watchers had always believed themselves invisible, but humanity had found them. The first strike came without warning. A Watcher fortress, orbiting a dying star, was suddenly surrounded by human warships. The fortress was ancient, built with defenses that had held against empires for centuries. Yet when the human ships fired, the fortress did not last an hour. Their weapons cut through walls of energy and armor as if they were paper. When the wreckage finally fell into the star, the galaxy felt a shiver run through it. News of the destruction spread quickly, though no one knew how the humans had found the fortress. Some whispered of spies. Others believed humanity had developed technology that could see through shadows themselves. Whatever the truth was, the result was undeniable. The Watchers were no longer safe. One by one, their strongholds fell. The humans struck with precision, not wasting time on small targets. They went directly for the heart. No fleet could match them. No defense could hold. Every battle was over before it truly began. And with each victory, humanity's message became clearer. The age of the Watchers was over. The galaxy watched in silence. For centuries, the Watchers had ruled over them, unseen but always present. Many species had feared them, hated them, even worshipped them. Now they saw their masters burn. Some cheered in secret. Others trembled, wondering if they would be next. Humanity had revealed the weakness of the greatest power in the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again. Inside their remaining fortresses, the Watchers grew desperate. They tried to send fleets to Earth, but those fleets never returned. They tried to use their influence to turn other empires against humanity, but their whispers were ignored. The galaxy had seen the truth. The Watchers were not gods. They were not eternal. They could be broken. The final blow came swiftly. The largest Watcher citadel, hidden in the depths of a black hole's orbit, was discovered. It was said to be unbreakable, a fortress that could never be touched by any enemy. And yet, when the humans arrived, the fortress fell. No one knows exactly how the battle was fought, because no one outside the system survived. But what was certain was that the citadel was gone, and with it, the rule of the Watchers ended. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was free of their grip. No more whispers in the dark. No more invisible hand guiding the fates of worlds. Humanity had done what no other species had even dared to dream. They had killed the Watchers. The fall of the Watchers changed everything. Empires that had lived under fear began to rise, uncertain but hopeful. Species that had once been oppressed saw a chance at freedom. And yet, with that freedom came a new fear. If the Watchers could be destroyed, what did that mean for everyone else? If humans could bring down the shadows that had ruled for centuries, what would stop them from taking the galaxy for themselves? As the last Watcher fortress burned, the galaxy realized a terrible truth. Extinction had indeed been approaching, but not for humanity. It was for those who had believed themselves untouchable. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity had proved that no shadow was safe from their light. And so, with the fall of the Watchers, the galaxy entered a new era. An era where humanity stood tall, no longer silent, no longer prey. The silence had hidden their rise, and now their voice was louder than ever. The Watchers were gone. But the story of what came next was only just beginning. The galaxy had changed forever. The fall of the Watchers was not just the end of a secret empire. It was the breaking of chains that had existed for centuries. Worlds that had lived in silence finally began to speak. Civilizations that had hidden in fear started to rise with courage. But in this new freedom, one truth remained clear to everyone: the humans had made it possible. Humanity had done what no one else dared to do. They had broken the shadows. After the last Watcher fortress was destroyed, the galaxy expected chaos. Many believed that without their invisible rulers, everything would collapse into endless war. Some thought humanity would seize control immediately and rule as the Watchers once had. But what happened surprised everyone. The humans did not crown themselves masters of the stars. They did not demand obedience. Instead, they sent out a message, a simple promise to every world: you are free. First, no one believed it. Too many years of fear had poisoned the hearts of the galaxy. Freedom sounded like another trick, another lie to pull them back into chains. But slowly, proof began to appear. Human fleets that had once struck the Watchers began helping broken colonies rebuild. They shared food with starving worlds. They repaired stations that had been abandoned. They gave technology to species who had been left behind. Humanity, instead of demanding tribute, offered hope. This act shocked the galaxy more than any battle. For so long, power had always meant control. The strong ruled, and the weak obeyed. But humanity showed something new, that strength could be used to protect, not dominate. Worlds that once feared the humans now looked to them with respect. And little by little, trust began to grow. Still, not everyone was at peace. There were empires that had grown fat under the rule of the Watchers. They had been given power, privilege, and safety. Without the Watchers, they feared losing everything. Some of them tried to resist the new dawn. They whispered lies, saying humanity would soon become worse than the shadows. They sent fleets to test human resolve, hoping to push them back. But each time they failed. Human warships were unmatched. Battles that should have lasted months ended in minutes. Yet the humans did not destroy these empires completely. They stopped their fleets but spared their worlds. They wanted the galaxy to understand that humanity did not seek endless war. They sought balance, a future where no single power would enslave the rest again. For the first time in history, the galaxy began to gather. Leaders from hundreds of species traveled to speak with humanity. They met not in the ruins of the Watchers' fortresses, but in orbit around Earth itself. The silent planet that had once terrified the galaxy was now the center of its hope. Delegates stepped onto human soil, expecting to see a world of steel, weapons, and endless armies. Instead, they saw cities full of life, oceans that stretched to the horizon, and skies filled with color. Earth was not just strong, it was alive. The meetings were long and difficult. Old grudges did not fade quickly. Many species demanded answers. Why had humanity stayed silent for so long? Why had they hidden their strength? Some feared that the humans would one day turn their weapons on everyone else. But each time, humanity answered with the same words: we wanted peace. We still do. But when peace was no longer possible, we chose survival. Slowly, a plan began to take shape. Humanity proposed something the galaxy had never seen before. A council not ruled by one species or one empire, but shared among all. A place where every world could speak, where no voice would be silenced. The idea sounded impossible. For centuries, the galaxy had only known fear and control. But after the fall of the Watchers, the impossible suddenly seemed possible. And so, the first council was born. It was fragile, untested, and full of doubt. Yet it was real. For the first time, instead of whispers in the dark, there was open discussion in the light. Humanity did not sit above the others, but among them. They offered their strength as protection, not chains. They made no promises of perfection, only the promise that never again would one hidden hand rule the stars. The galaxy began to heal. Worlds once enslaved by the Watchers slowly rebuilt. Species that had been scattered returned to their homes. Old enemies sat at the same table, not as friends, but as survivors who understood that they needed each other. And always, at the center of it all, humanity stood, silent no longer, but steady, a reminder that strength did not have to mean tyranny. Still, deep in the hearts of many, fear remained. The humans had shown mercy, but everyone had seen what they were capable of. They had destroyed the Watchers, the greatest power in the galaxy. If one day they chose to rule, who could stop them? It was a question that no one dared to ask aloud, but it lingered in every mind. And humanity? They knew this fear. They saw it in the eyes of those they met. But instead of answering with force, they answered with action. They continued to share, to help, to protect. They proved with every day that they were not the new shadows, but something different. Something the galaxy had never seen before. The day Earth fell silent had been the day the galaxy realized extinction was near. But in the end, it was not extinction of life that came, it was the extinction of fear. The silence had been the storm before the dawn. And when the dawn came, it brought light brighter than anyone had expected. A new age had begun. An age not ruled by shadows, but by voices. An age where the galaxy was no longer chained by fear. The Watchers were gone, but humanity remained. And in their presence, the stars themselves seemed to burn brighter, as if the universe knew that something had changed forever. It was the new dawn, and though the future was uncertain, one truth echoed across every world. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy would never be silent again.